A black Little Mermaid? A Latina Snow White? Has Disney gone too woke? Disney has been accused of becoming woke by some, but is that true? Has Disney really ruined its brand by being quote unquote too woke? Disney is one, if not the most recognizable brand in the whole world. The Walt Disney Company is an American multinational mass media and entertainment conglomerate founded under the name of Disney Brothers Studios on October 16, 1923, by Walt Disney and his brother Roy Disney. We cannot deny the racism, bigotry, and anti Semitic tropes in some of the Disney productions, including some movies that were produced way after Disney passing away. And Walt Disney Company has carefully worked on their brand by approaching these past mistakes as points from where they have grown and learned. Walt Disney image has been carefully protected and shaped by the Walt Disney Company, including diversity as part of their core business strategy. Since the brand is closely connected with Walt Disney, the company is named after him after all, and himself is an American cultural icon. The company has worked very hard to perpetuate his legacy by protecting his wholesome persona as much as possible. The public might never know with certainty who was the real Walt Disney. So many rumors about someone who's almost idealized but not so much confirmed information about him. Was he a serial cheater? Was he a chain smoker? Was he a misogynist? Was he an anti Semite? We do know, however, that he did give a tour of his animation studios to Nazi propaganda filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl in 1938, just a month after Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, which was a pogrom against German Jews in November of 1938 done by the Nazi Party's paramilitary, the Hitler Youth, and German civilians with no intervention from German authorities. Something that Walt Disney was for sure is that he was anti workers' rights. He joined several anti communist organizations which he used to suppress workers' rights in his company, including the almost forgotten 1941 animation workers' strike. But let's talk about the recent history of the Walt Disney Company. Trigger warning, we will discuss physical and emotional abuse and suicide. The Walt Disney Company's business model includes exploitation of workers in the United States and abroad, contributing to global models of inequality and extraction of resources in other countries, especially in developing countries. Almost all companies in the world have sweatshops in developing countries, and Disney is not an exception. An investigation conducted by campaign groups like China Labor Watch, Action Aid, CIR, and Solidasus revealed in report published back in 2018 the nightmare working conditions that workers were under in four toy factories in China. Such factories produce toys for Hasbro, Mattel, and Disney. Some of the findings of this research are: no safety training for workers. The workers were forced to handle dangerous chemicals that are linked to poisoning and leukemia. Workers were forced to sign blank employment contracts, and they live under poor living quarters and more than 170 hours of overtime per month. In an undercover investigation conducted by the human rights group SACOM, published in 2011 about the Sturdy Products factory in China where Disney products are made, they found the use of child labor, and staff was forced to do 3 times the amount of overtime allowed by law. Almost no security measures for the workers. Those who work in the assembling line at the sturdy products factory are exposed to dangerous chemicals and poor ventilation. Workers have fallen ill due to this, and when workers injure themselves on the production line, they get shouted by managers and forced to work without any medical treatment. Also, they describe an environment of bullying and abuses, and a worker ended her own life after constant verbal and emotional abuse from her bosses. Sadly, this type of abuses against workers' rights are not uncommon in sweatshops, and Disney is just one of the many companies that profit from the political climate that turns countries like this one's into sweatshops camps for the greed of Western companies. Do you remember the infamous live action version of Mulan? The movie was filmed in Xinjiang, where human rights abuses against Uyghurs were taking place, including the detention of at least 1 million Uyghurs in extrajudicial intermittent camps and forced sterilization and birth control of Uyghur women. Are you going to tell me they didn't know about this? And I also have a question. Why did they decide to specifically film the movie in that region? Jewenishtet Mesfin was a 61-year-old immigrant from Eritrea who worked as a custodian at Disneyland in Anaheim, California. Back in 2017, she was found dead in the car that she was living in. While being the biggest employer in the area, it is reported that Disneyland in Anaheim underpays its workers, exploits them, and that a significant part of them are either homeless or live under unstable housing conditions. For example, a worker described how she had to live out of her car for 3.5 months despite working 40 to 60 hours a week. A survey conducted back in 2018 to Disneyland workers in LA revealed that more than 75% of them can't afford basic expenses, and 1 in 10 have experienced homelessness while working at Disneyland. These figures are similar in Disney World in Orlando, Florida. A Disneyland worker said to Vice reporters that she would experience periods of homelessness with her daughter even when paying for a motel. I would pay for 3 or 4 nights a week, whatever I could afford out of that week's paycheck, and the rest of the nights my 12-year-old daughter and I slept in my car. Many times I would drive to Disney property and park my car there because I knew it was a safe place. To this day, the company keeps underpaying its workers while having record profits and receiving billions in tax breaks, and considerable decrease in the quality of life in the areas where they operate. Pinkwashing and wokewashing are a key part of Disney's huge multinational business model, and it helps them to not only improve their brand but also increase their profit margins. Let's talk about Florida. Disney has a lot of power in Florida politics, spending millions lobbying laws every election cycle. In the 2020 campaign cycle, the Walt Disney Company gave almost 80% of the campaign donations to Republicans, those same Republicans that are enacting anti-LGBTQ plus laws in the state. Disney even donated more than $100,000 to the Friends of Ron DeSantis Political Action Committee. When the controversial denominated Don't Say Gay bill came out in Florida, LGBTQ plus Disney employees walked out of the company because the company was being very silent about this, even though they tend to be outspoken about other issues. And the company's excuse was that they decided to work behind the scenes with politicians to see what they could do to help. I could spend hours talking about why Ron DeSantis is a horrible right-wing populist with fascist tendencies that is obsessed with culture wars, with the charisma of a villain from a low-budget Christian movie, but I want to focus on his petty crusade against Disney because it's not only petty, but as I mentioned before, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, now, it's important for you to understand that what makes Disney so special in the state of Florida. In 1967, the Florida state legislature created the Reedy Creek Improvement District for Walt Disney World, which is a special taxing district. This entails that Disney pay taxes to such district which uses the money for the services in such area. This law gives Disney a lot of tax benefits. It gives them control over the operations of the municipal services, complete autonomy over decisions about the land, and gives Disney special exemptions for some regulations. This means that the Walt Disney Company pretty much governs its theme parks. Now, Mr. Ron DeSantis sees Disney as a woke company that hurt his feelings and he wants to eliminate the company's special tax district in Florida. Disney is a horrible corporation. Neither DeSantis nor Disney is right. But keep in mind how meaningless this feud is, especially since even if DeSantis manages to dismantle the Reedy Creek Improvement District, Disney will still keep a lot of its benefits in Florida, including up to $500 million in tax credits over 20 years if they keep operating in Florida regardless. Keep in mind that Disney has always been and is still a key part in controlling politics in Florida. And I do believe that not only Ron DeSantis is trying to milk the whole culture wars thing, but also Disney profits from them because it gives them, the Walt Disney Company, a lot of free publicity and presents the multimedia conglomerate as being in a moral high ground.
We fight the woke in the legislature. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the corporations. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
According to Wikipedia, woke is an adjective derived from African American Vernacular English that means alert to racial prejudice and discrimination. The phrase stay woke has been present in African American Vernacular English since the 1930s and is a term strongly connected with the African American community. In the past few years, this term has been appropriated by the international far right as a dog whistle and to be used as a pejorative against anyone or anything who they seem progressive or left-wing, and in some contexts has become a code word to insult black people. All this is important to understand the current climate of culture wars and how the right-wing universe also financially profits from them. Look at the movie The Sound of Freedom. In reality, it's just another mediocre action movie with white saber complex like nothing special. But the producers of the movie galvanized conservatives, selling the idea that big Hollywood didn't want them to see the movie because it fights pedophilia and Hollywood just is full of woke people who want to cancel the movie, etc. And this culture war strategy, which was full of lies, by the way, of course, actually worked and the movie was a financial success for the production company. Culture wars are at the core of the far right and conservatives in general. They have just had different names in the past. And just a quick note, when I'm saying the right, I'm including the far right, fascism, fans of a failed Austrian painter with a funny mustache, etc. Here's the paradox of culture wars. While being ridiculous, that doesn't mean they're not dangerous, because culture wars are a call for action. In its ridiculousness is where the danger is hidden. What is called woke culture has been called before cultural Bolshevism and cultural Marxism. According to Wikipedia, cultural Bolshevism was a term widely used by state-sponsored critics in Nazi Germany to denounce secularist, modernist, and progressive cultural movements. And according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, Cultural Marxism is a conspiracy theory that believes this is an international attempt to wreck American culture and morality and the destruction of Western society through progressive ideas. The core idea of terms like cultural Bolshevism and cultural Marxism is the conspiracy that external forces want to destroy Western society, and they always have an anti Semitic twist. Culture wars help normalize violence against minorities while at the same time trivializes our struggles, indulging in a sea of misinformation that drowns our valid concerns. And with normalization and the call for action that they entail, culture wars are and have always been dangerous. Stochastic terrorism is a more modern term to define and understand current acts of violence and terrorism that are a consequence of these culture wars. According to some scholars and experts, it involves the use of mass media to provoke random acts of ideologically motivated violence that are statistically predictable but individually unpredictable. Like in the past, none of these acts of violence happen in a vacuum or are just isolated events. And all this petty culture wars, anti woke bickering shows how racism and bigotry in general are powerful drugs that rots people's brain to the point that you will see them invested in fights that have nothing to do with things that will benefit them. And through that rot that festers under pre existing biases, prejudice, and bigotry, more hate goes through. And that's how culture wars are effective. Let's be honest. How bigoted you must be to choose to fight about Black Little Mermaid. The problem with Disney is not at all the well documented problematic things Disney does, but the fact that they casted a non white woman to be Snow White in a movie. They don't care about children, all of these far right grifters, they don't care about values or whatever. They're just bigoted and annoying. And conservatives have been trying to cancel everything since the beginning of time. This is not new. And behind the triviality and absurdity, the most extreme heights. I mean, it was not a coincidence that in the middle of the Santis versus Disney, some were waving swastikas outside Disney World in Orlando, Florida, in support of the Santis. Liberals don't care about us because at the end they don't want meaningful changes and the right wants to exterminate us. Representation is important. I am all up for representation, but it needs to come with the call for meaningful actions. That's why the focus of this conversation that we're having right now is the Walt Disney Company as a corporation. In the same way corporations do pink washing and green washing, they also do woke washing, which is when social justice themes are used by companies to create a positive image. And I think the Walt Disney Corporation profits from culture wars and woke washing because it cleans the image of the company. It gives them a lot of free publicity and it deviates attention from all of the problematic things that this company has done and is still doing. And of course, there's also the aspect of wanting to have their brand and movies age in the best way possible, but is that enough? The Walt Disney Company has worked very hard to keep a very clean image to the public and to show itself as a very progressive company. But when we scratch the surface, we can see that it's all a farce. Representation is important, and I don't criticize those who celebrate it. At the end of the day, especially Disney, is all part of our collective cultural zeitgeist. Therefore, it is fair to know the reality of a company that has produced media which has shaped and is shaping generations and which will continue to do so for generations to come. If anything, Disney isn't and will never be woke enough. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe and support this project. I'm in most podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok. And I want to thank my Patreons. I'm on Patreon where I have a lot of exclusive content. And I will have like extra commentary on Disney. I'm gonna talk more about some blind items about Disney and more things. Thank you so much for listening and watching once again. And this is Mango Podcast.